90% of Canadians live below one invisible line. Canada is the second largest country on Earth, almost 4 million square miles of land. And nearly 90% of the people who live there are pressed into a thin strip along the very bottom, most of them within about 100 miles of the United States border. Draw one line across the map, roughly at the level of the 49th parallel, and almost the entire population sits below it. The empty half of Canada is not empty because it is too cold. Siberia is colder and still holds cities of 1 million people. Something else drew this line, a wall you cannot see, built from rock, soil, and the pull of the country next door. In the next few minutes, we map exactly where the line runs, and the 4 reasons it will not move. Here is what makes this strange. Canada has more room than almost any nation alive, roughly 10 million square kilometers of it. Yet its people crowd together as if they were running out of space. Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa all sit south of Seattle. Windsor sits farther south than the northern edge of California. The average Canadian does not live in a frozen north at all. They live in a narrow, mild, crowded band that hugs the American border. So the real puzzle is not the weather. It is why this exact ribbon of land fills up while a country the size of a continent stays dark. 4 forces draw the line, and they all point the same way. Start with the line itself. Statistics Canada counts about 41 million people in the whole country. Roughly 2/3 of them live within 100 kilometers of the United States border and by the wider 100-mile measure that share climbs toward 90%. That is the invisible line. Now look at how tight the squeeze really gets. More than half of all Canadians, over 18 million people, live in a single corridor that runs from Quebec City through Montreal and Ottawa down to Toronto and Windsor. It is about 700 miles long and rarely more than 150 miles deep. Around Toronto alone, the region called the Golden Horseshoe packs in almost 10 million. Meanwhile, the country as a whole averages just 4 people per square kilometer, one of the lowest densities on the planet. The mental map most people carry is simply wrong. Canadians are not spread thin across a vast northern wilderness. Toronto is farther south than Portland, Oregon. Most of the population lives below the 49th parallel, the same latitude that forms the western border with the United States. The frozen north that defines Canada in the imagination is almost entirely unoccupied. The people are all down here, in a warm, crowded sliver, staring across a river or a field at America. To put the emptiness in perspective, the 3 northern territories together are larger than India, yet almost nobody lives in them at all. So the real question is not why the north is empty. It is why this exact band, and nowhere else, fills up. And the first answer is buried in the ground. The first wall is made of rock, and it is called the Canadian Shield. This is a vast horseshoe of ancient bedrock, some of the oldest exposed stone on Earth, wrapping around Hudson Bay and covering close to half of Canada. From the air, it looks empty and beautiful, endless gray rock, black spruce, and tens of thousands of lakes. But it is nearly useless for settlement. The last ice age scraped the soil off the shield and dumped it further south. What is left is a thin, acidic skin over solid granite, often just a few inches deep. You cannot plow it. Crops will not hold. Building on it is brutally expensive because every road, rail line, and pipeline has to be blasted through rock or floated across muskeg swamp. So the shield became mining and forestry country, a place you extract from and fly out of, not a place you raise a family. It covers Ontario and Quebec north of the cities, most of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and nearly all of Labrador. And it sets a hard ceiling on where ordinary life can spread. The southern cities did not choose to hug the border out of love for America. They were pinned against it, backed up against a wall of bare stone that begins just a short drive north of Toronto and Montreal. The shield is the single biggest reason the empty half of Canada is empty, and it is not the only barrier stacked on top of it. If rock is the first wall, soil is the second. For all its size, Canada is one of the least farmable large countries on Earth. Less than 5% of the entire nation is cropland. Almost all of that good soil sits in just two places, and both of them are in the south. The first is the Prairie Triangle across southern Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, the wheat belt that helps feed the world. The second is the lowland along the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River, where the growing season is long enough and the winters mild enough to support dense settlement. Everywhere else, the growing season collapses. Push a few hundred kilometers north and the frost-free window shrinks to a matter of weeks. The soil turns to shield rock or waterlogged bog, and commercial farming simply stops. Food has to be trucked or flown in at brutal cost. In the far north, a single bag of groceries can cost 3 or 4 times what it does in Toronto. People follow food and warmth, and in Canada, both of them run out fast as you move north. It is a stark rule. In this country, latitude is destiny, and that destiny turns harsh just a short drive north of the cities. So the farmland map and the population map are nearly the same map. The band that can feed itself is the band where people live. Layer the soil map on top of the rock map, and the empty north is already explained by geography alone. But there is a third force, and this one is not about the land at all. It is about the neighbor to the south. The third force is the border itself, and it works like a magnet, not a fence. That long straight line across the west, the 49th parallel, was fixed by treaty in 1818 and extended to the Pacific in 1846. For most of Canadian history, the smartest place to build a city was as close to the United States as you could get. The reason is trade. Canada and the United States run one of the largest trading relationships on Earth, and around 3/4 of everything Canada exports goes south across that border. A factory in Windsor sits right across the river from Detroit. Vancouver ships to Seattle. The corridor cities grew rich by facing south, plugging straight into the American economy and into the warmth of the Great Lakes that softened their winters. Railways locked it in. When Canada was stitched together in the 1800s, the main line ran east to west just above the border, and towns bloomed along it like beads on a string, each one a short hop from American markets. Immigration reinforced it again because new arrivals settled where the jobs and the cities already were. So the line became self-sustaining. People move to where people already are, and in Canada, that has always meant the southern band. The magnet pulls everyone toward the same warm, connected, profitable edge, and it quietly leaves the north to a very small number of people. So who is left up there? Stand at the top of Canada, and the numbers become almost unreal. The 3 northern territories, Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, cover about 40% of the country's land area. Together, they hold roughly 130,000 people, about 0.3% of the population. Nunavut alone is larger than most countries on Earth, nearly 2 million square kilometers, and only about 40,000 people live in it. That is a density near 0.02 of a person per square kilometer. There are no roads connecting most of these communities to the rest of Canada. You arrive by plane or by boat in the short window when the sea ice retreats. Underneath much of the ground lies permafrost, soil frozen solid all year round, which buckles buildings and turns construction into a nightmare. Above the Arctic Circle, the winter darkness lasts for weeks at a time. This is the Canada of the imagination, the frozen empty vastness, and almost nobody actually lives in it. It is not that people tried to settle the north and failed. For the most part, they simply never came, because the rock, the soil, the climate, and the economy all pointed the other way. The far north is the negative space that the invisible line creates. Everything the south has, the north lacks. And that single contrast is the whole story of Canadian geography. So why do 90% of Canadians live below one invisible line? Not because of the cold, at least not the cold alone. The line is really three maps stacked on top of each other. First, the rock. The Canadian Shield covers almost half the country in bare ancient bedrock that cannot be farmed and can barely be built on. Second, the soil. Less than 5% of Canada is cropland, and nearly all of it lies in the southern prairies and the St. Lawrence lowlands. Third, the magnet. The border is not a wall but a pole, drawing cities south toward American trade and the mild, connected corridor. Where all three overlap, and only there, you get the thin, warm band that holds almost the entire nation. The north is not empty because Canadians fear it. It is empty because the ground itself says no. Layer rock, soil, and economy together, and the invisible line draws itself. It is one of the most extreme population patterns on the planet, a country the size of a continent living in the space of a ribbon. Once you see the line, you can never unsee it on a map of Canada again. Next time we leave the empty places behind and swing to the opposite extreme. There is an island that was once the most crowded place on Earth, packed edge to edge with thousands of people, and today it stands completely abandoned, a silent ghost town in the sea. The most crowded island on Earth is now a ghost town, and that story is next. If you want to keep mapping the emptiest and strangest places on the planet, subscribe to No One Lives Here, and we will see you at the next map.